Good morning. Hi, folks. Oh, I'm so glad you guys are able to come. The first workshop of 2022. Let's see if I recognize the names. Oh, lots of you guys. It's like boom, 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 boom on my screen. So it's like hard to catch you. Hey, Morgan. Hi, Lisa. Hey, Charity. Leslie, good to see you. Tina. Let's see. Okay, you guys are right on time, bright-eyed and bushy-tailed. Hey, Amanda. How's everyone feeling today? Well, we just let folks trickle in. I'm excited. This is my first time teaching this whole like set of content around new donors. I'll just like confess, I've really resisted teaching anything around new donors for the longest time, because as I've taught, it's not always the best question to be asking, who's the new donor, versus how can I keep my donors. But I was over the holiday break kind of having this moment of like, sometimes you just need new donors. I don't know how else to say it, whether you're a startup organization and you're just getting going, or you have increased your budget, and even if you retained 100% of your donors, you need fresh ones. I just kind of was like, well, sometimes you need new donors, and figuring out how to do that if you haven't been taught is new material and new, I don't know. It might not come just naturally to figure that out. So I gave in, and we're going to start talking about it. But first, there's some foundational work that must be laid. While we just wait another second, as you guys probably know, let me see if I can, this helps a little bit. Feels very dark now. Let's see. I don't know if the sun, maybe that's a little bit better. Okay, who here, thumbs up, uses Instagram for their nonprofit? I see some thumbs. Okay, well then you guys can maybe humor me for the first second, if you don't mind. If anyone is so brave as to put their camera on for just the quickest second, I just need to take a little video so that I can make a reel, because that's kind of another course I'm thinking about, or like some challenge. Would you guys actually be up for that? If I put together like a 7-day reels challenge, would you guys do it with me? Or, oh, okay, we said totally, because it's crazy. I've been having, do you guys know Rachel from Small Shop Strategies? We're both like, what the is going on? Because just, you get no reach, no engage. It's like, so I just think I have to give in. So if you guys would be so kind as to undo your camera for just a second, I'm just going to do the quickest tap in and tap out. And I promise you can go back to being off the screen. I promise. And thank you in advance. I appreciate you guys. Okay. We're just going to go, look, there's not even going to be any audio on it. Okay. How do I do it? I go like this. Okay, 1, 2, 3. Oh, wait, hold on. See, this is how bad I am at this. Stay with me, folks. Stay with me, folks. Stay with me, folks. Okay, here we go. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Okay, you're the best. Now we can get down to business. All right. Any questions before we begin? Feel free to keep your screens on, take your screens off, whatever you fancy. It's all good on my side. I'm going to share my screen. just so we're all making sure we're in the same place, because I know I've got a lot of presentations happening this week. This is the workshop on the 5 things you need to do before you go out and find new donors. Not to be confused with our amazing session that's happening tomorrow with Jamile Cannon. I'm very excited for that conversation if it works for your calendars. Okay, let me share my screen. I think it's this one. Can you guys see my screen? Thumbs up. Okay, cool. I'm going to go into present mode. Okay, here we go. First workshop of 2022, the 5 must-dos before finding new donors. Let us begin. If you guys don't know me, because there are some new names that I'm not recognizing, I'm Jess. I am the founder and CEO of Out in the Boons, a small shop that helps nonprofits raise more money in person and online. I'm a very serious tea drinker. I drink no coffee. It has nothing to do with caffeine because I like a very strong tea. I just prefer the taste. I've been fundraising for nonprofits for 18 years. I got lucky, I guess is the right word, where my first job out of college, well, first job even in college, was with a startup nonprofit. And I've been raising money ever since. And I love, 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 love this Out in the Boons community. You guys are the best nonprofit leaders and fundraisers on the planet. And I'm excited to share this information with you guys today. Okay, but first, I'm actually very proud of this question. I thought about it when I was walking Billy. If you were a city, which one would you be? I want to get to know you all in the chat a little bit. Tell me who you are. If you were a city, which one would you be? I want to know, do we have like, let's see. Oh, let's see. Okay, Jeanette, thank you, because I'm New York City too. I was like, I'm intense. And I think, Jeanette, you might be a fellow Scorpio, if my memory like reminds me. Oh my gosh, yes. So we're like intense and wonderful, but like a little messy. Amanda, you're gonna have to tell me a little bit about what being Boise is. Okay, so if you're a city, which city would you be? Are you like Maui? Are you, you know, Des Moines? Are you Austin? I love this. Paris. Paris. Yes, Charity, you are Paris for sure. I was thinking this might say a lot about us if we say what city we're from. So I thought I'd get to know the group a little bit here. For my fellow New York Cityers, Savannah, London. What did Stephanie, did you say that Stephanie? I'm curious if Stephanie said she herself was Vegas. She is a little spicy like that. Belfast. Wow. Kind of a mess and super intense, but trying really, really hard. Oh, I love that. I need to go there to experience that, because that kind of sounds exactly like me. Okay, cool. Thank you for indulging me. I thought it would be kind of a fun question to ask versus some of my normal ones. But here we go. Okay, let's do this. Okay, first of all, the must-do number 1 thing before you go out and find new donors might sound obvious, but it's get your mind right. And I'm going to tell you a story of why. So many, many times when I see nonprofit leaders and fundraisers, and when I'm talking to them and I'm giving them advice, this is kind of the vibe that I get. It's a lot of people saying to me, well, I've tried that. Well, I've done that. Well, I asked them that. And my question back a lot of the time is, well, how many times did you try that? With how many people did you try that? How many times did you go for it? Because the truth is one is not enough. I say the phrase a lot of time, the fortune is in the follow-up. And as nonprofit leaders and fundraisers trying to fundraise, you have to remember that people are so busy, and the people that follow up and continue the outreach are the people that are going to win the game. My dad taught me that as a young kid. He said the person who actually catches me on the phone is the person that's going to keep my business. And that is always stuck with me. Like one more time, until I hear a flat out stop following up with me. You know, you have to do that. The other thing I want to say about this a little bit is the negative kind of, I've tried that, like that real downer, like low energy, low vibe, low positivity, energy that you are giving out to the world. If that's you, that is what you are going to attract. I had a conversation with an executive director that was just like, I got off the phone and I was like exhausted because just her vibe was so low energy. And I thought no one is going to want to jump on her train, on her board, because even if she's doing the most fantastic work on the planet, no one wants to go sit next to someone who's kind of down and out and negative Nancy, and someone who is optimistic, someone that has, good energy, as they say. That is the kind of person you're trying to attract as donors. And so you have to really, really, really work hard at putting that energy out. I got a lot of feedback yesterday on my email about getting back out there, which we're going to talk about in a little bit. And I get it. You guys are tired. It's been a long couple of years with this pandemic, not to mention we're totally out of practice. And it can feel like, oh, I don't want to climb back up that mountain. But I promise you that when you put out that energy, that's what you're going to get back. And I just really encourage you to do what you need to do. Go sit in the sunshine for 10 minutes, go on a walk, listen to a meditation, or dance around your house, or treat yourself to that once a month Diet Coke, or whatever your vice is. But do what you need to do to raise your vibration so that you will then attract people who are, go-getters and happy and positive, and thus wanting to be champions of your organization with that same vibe, versus that oh, well, no one's going to give to us. Oh, well, I already asked them one time. Oh, well, they never do anything when they say they're going to volunteer. No one wants that kind of vibe in their world. Okay, must do number 2. This is a little bit of a hard truth, but it's get your systems in place. And this comes from someone whose brain does not think in systems at all. My number 1 strength finder is activator. My number 2 strength finder is ideation. So I think of ideas all day long, and it's barely out of my brain before I'm moving on it. So things like systems and organization and attention to detail feel like they're slowing me down, and it's just not my zone, right? But it also is impossible to scale. It's impossible to eventually not burn out if you don't get your systems in place. So I want you to look at these questions, and I want you to answer them to yourself. And let me know if this last question is cut off. If you received 100 donations tomorrow, could you process their donations easily? Meaning, are you still manually processing things, or do you have some janky system in place that sometimes works? Are you cashing checks and checks only because you haven't set up an online system? Think about that, because those things actually don't take up that much time to set up, and they can save you hours and hours and hours of manual processing. Next question. If you received 100 donations tomorrow, could you generously thank your donors within 24 to 48 hours? And when I say generously, I'm not talking about that automated tax receipt. Do you have processes in place where you're handwriting note cards, where you're doing Loom thank you videos where you're hopping on the phone? Do you have it blocked in your calendar for 45 minutes each and every day to practice gratitude? Do you have a team where you guys have a process of gratitude in place where maybe your development coordinator or admin person is writing the address on the envelope and putting the stamp on and teeing it up so that all you have to do is kind of sign the card? There's a million ways to do this, but if you don't have a thanking system in place, 100% of those donors, the likelihood of them repeating their donation is very slim. And a big issue I see with nonprofits, especially the small shops, is that your retention rates are too low. That means you're always going to be on the hamster wheel. You're never going to retain your donors, and you're always going to be working so hard each and every year to be getting new donors versus keeping the donors that you do have. Next, I want you to think, do you have at least a 3 to 7 touch point plan in place to follow up with all of your donors? So we send the automatic tax receipt, right? Hopefully they get a really generous thank you within 48 hours of their gift being made. But what happens afterwards? What are you doing to indoctrinate them into your work? How are you informing them of their impact? Are you making smart decisions to loop back to their gift? For example, hey, you gave $100 3 months ago. I just wanted to let you know what that $100 has done. What are your touch points moving past their gift so that, again, they stay very warm and never really drop back down to the cold? If you don't have that in place, you need to go back to the drawing board and write it down. After a first gift, they get this over a, let's say, 90-day period or a 6-month period. That will keep you organized, that will keep you on track, and that will keep your donors coming back. And then last but not least, do you have a system to be able to track and report those donations? If you are still, I know a lot of organizations that can take it pretty far in, Google Sheets and Excel, and that's fine up until a point. But if you suddenly got 100 donations tomorrow, it's going to, again, the amount of time it will take for you to manually be inserting that data and being able to pull numbers and calculate things, it becomes, I don't want to say a waste of your time, but it becomes not the best use of your time versus investing in a CRM or some sort of nonprofit tech tool that literally does it for you automatically. It allows you to pull reports. It allows you to filter. It allows you to do all of these things. I really want you to think of that, because nonprofits are so hungry for, I want new donors, And my question is, could you handle it? Could you really handle? Because again, if you got the positive vibes going, you've got the great story to tell, and you've got the systems in place, bravo. But if any one of those things is out of alignment, you are going to be knocking your head against the wall saying oh my gosh, I can't even handle the donors that are coming in. And we don't want that. We want you to feel like, amazing and grateful and a lot of gratitude around getting each and every donor that comes through the door. I want you guys to know that I see that there's some comments in the chat. I'm going to come back to those. And if there's questions in there, I promise I'll come back. Okay. But I do want to know how we're doing. Pulse check. So actually what I would love for you to do right now is write down or, name it in the chat. What's one system that has room for improvement? It could be any one of these points. There's a whole bunch out there. I find that when I kind of call it out or name it out, it keeps me accountable. So either feel free to write in what's one system that you could get in place more efficiently, better from the get-go, put it in the chat, put it in your notebook, circle it, highlight it, mark it with a star, and make sure that that becomes one of the foundations before you even think about going out and finding a new donor. I'm going to give you guys actually just a second to do that. Okay, I see some stuff coming in. Don't be shy. the point of this workshop is to also, it's a workshop. So rather than saying, oh, I'll watch the replay later and do all the work later, like just do it now so that you don't have to go back and do it another time. Okay, now we're on to must do number 3. I've been talking about this a lot lately. If you've gotten all of my emails, you saw the quick start guide, you saw the calculator, but the must do number 3 is to know your numbers, because I don't want to see you throwing spaghetti at the wall anymore. I was in the DMs with someone in our community, and she was asking me about the math. And what came to light was that, for example, her retention rate was lower than I think she would have wanted it to be. And so one of the things that was illuminated from our conversation is that unless we course correct on our retention numbers, the amount of new donors we're going to have to find each and every year is going to become overwhelming. So let's go through these questions. And in fact, if you don't know what your numbers are, I'm going to come off screen for a second and I can help you figure this out, because I know sometimes the math is a little funky. So I want you to tell me, what is your current retention rate? What is your current retention rate gap, which is essentially 100% minus your current retention rate. That gives you your gap. How much revenue can you expect to recap in 2022 from 2021? You get that number by taking your previous year's revenue and multiplying it by your retention rate. And then how much revenue can you expect to lapse in 2022 from 2021? So again, that's taking that big number, your revenue from last year, and subtracting it. Is that right? You're multiplying it, excuse me, from your retention rate gap number. And then the important question, right? How many new donors do you actually need? Because we say we want more is more, right? And I'll take every single new donor that comes my way. Or, the reason why I bring that up is because, you might be able to just go find one new donor to cover that gap amount. And that's a very different strategy than trying to recruit 300 new monthly donors at a much lower level. Or maybe you want to, for the first time ever, implement a major gift strategy where you're trying to find 20 major gift donors to cover that gap. That's a very different strategy than like a peer fundraising campaign. So this kind of allows you to be strategic and make decisions based on data, not just like where the wind takes you, keeps you focused. And I know for me, when I'm working with my clients, that it becomes manageable. So I want to stop sharing the screen and see, how are you guys feeling about the numbers? Like, do numbers give you a headache? Do you know your numbers? Is anyone brave enough to come and share what their numbers might be? Have you never, ever, ever done your tracking around your numbers? That's okay too. It's okay if you're just getting started. You also know that that could be a good place to start. Does anyone want to be so brave? There has to be one brave person. Thank you.
I'll go.
Oh, thanks, Charity.
Well, I'm a new nonprofit. We were founded just before the pandemic. So I had to find some major pivots and wallow in self-pity for a little bit. But eventually found our bread and butter, our stronghold. And what you're bringing to light to me in terms of, I definitely need to acknowledge my numbers, but then acknowledge within those numbers, like I'm always thinking big and very ambitious. So when I think of numbers, I just shoot for the blue sky and the universe. But what you are saying to me is the power in those small numbers that I have from existing donors. There's I'm not utilizing that specific donor's network. Because if they're donating, then that means they saw something in the work that we're doing, which possibly translates into who their like friendship groups are, who they hang out with. I feel like like-minded people kind of, do kind of cluster together. So yeah, you're not forcing me, but you're directing me in an area where I want to look more at that. I actually think that there's some bread and butter right there.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I'm hearing from the numbers.
Amazing. So good. And I mean, I think there's a lot of good in thinking really big. Like if we had $5 million, we could do A, B, and C, right? And it's good to think of the 10-year or the 5-year plan. Very, very rarely are people growing from like 0 to $1 million or 1 million to 10 million. I do think there is a flywheel effect. And like, do you guys know what the flywheel effect is? Like, it's kind of like the snowball effect where you're on one of those bikes and it's really hard at the beginning to start pushing, but then you keep going and you can't stop. That's the flywheel effect. And I know it's exciting to think of this vision over here, but you have to be realistic and you have to get going first. And so rather than thinking of like the $1 million or the $10 million goal or the $100 million goal, depending on what level you're at, if you're not yet raising $100,000 or $500,000, like what are the steps to get you there? And then think everything on top of that is the cherry on top, right? And then you should celebrate your wins. I really, really, really believe in having conservative, I believe in having ambitious vision and conservative financial goals, because I think it's so important for fundraisers to have wins and meet your financial goals. So I think that that's great, Charity. And I know that you have probably people that are right in your current network. And then that can help you expand. I also see here in the comments that Tina has a retention rate of 57%, which is great. It's above the average. The average sits at about 51%, which, let's just be straight, like 51% is disappointing, because it basically means for every new donor you get, you're losing one. But anything above 51% is above average for our industry, but like we want to shoot for that 75-80%. That would be like awesome. That means her gap is 225K. She's expecting to recap 300. So she's going to now have to figure out how she's going to strategically go find 225K, which is very specific, right? Like it's not her trying to go raise $1 million. It's not her trying to just like see what comes. It's $225,000 that she can choose to divide how she wants to do. Maybe it's some foundations, maybe it's an event, maybe it's some major gift donors, maybe she does a monthly giving campaign. Like she can pick what her strategies are, but she knows her eye on the prize is now around $225,000. And that, like, knowledge is power. Like that is so cool to have, like, zing, a focus, right? Can't include grants. Okay, sorry about that. Amanda, a recap means, like, if I think of retention is like, what do you retain? If like this is a bucket of water, like what are you retaining versus what is seeping through? The recap amount is like what stays in the bucket. The lapsed amount, or the gap, is like what falls through the mesh. That's how I think of it. Exactly. Recaptured. Exactly. Shannon says, I don't know our numbers yet because we've just started using our new CRM. It has a meeting scheduled. This will be the first time. Oh my gosh. Okay. See what I mean, guys? If you're a new nonprofit, there are organizations that are 105 years old, just getting started with CRM. So like, that is amazing. That's incredible. Does that mean you've been working off spreadsheets?
Well, we are an organization that is faith-based, and we're tied to a denomination. So we've been struggling along for several years using the denominations database, which is not set up for fundraising or capturing donor information or anything. So we have 5 million spreadsheets. We had some data from that other database. All of that has now been input into our new CRM, and we're just trying to figure out how to slice and dice it. So yeah, 105 years. I mean, they really were only keeping records from, like, I don't know, the 90s maybe, but
wow.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah, we
wow.
counted at one point between 3 computers, we had 172 spreadsheets.
Oh my gosh.
Yes.
As someone that like doesn't thrive in the spreadsheet world, that is
Yeah.
kind of my nightmare. Well,
It was definitely a nightmare. And that's why we have a database manager, is we had to have somebody that has that brain that could like
totally. I don't know how
put it
else
all
to do it.
together. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. Oh my gosh. Well, wow. And congratulations. So for all of you organizations who are less than like 3 or 5 years old, and you are either getting started with a CRM or choosing to start with a CRM, like there are people out there 105 years old that have just begun.
Do it now.
Yeah, totally. I'm getting some questions here that I'm going to come back to about CRM recommendations, and some other tools for figuring that out. I'll come back to that, but I'm going to go back to, I think we're on must do number 3. So it's know your numbers, because again, I think the biggest takeaway I want you to know about know your numbers is that when you know what you're pointing towards, it's much more manageable to make decisions and say no to things. For example, if you know that you are Lisa and you have $225,000 that you need to go raise in the next 12 months that cannot include grants, and you decide we're doing major gifts in a monthly giving program, when your board member comes over to you or your leadership team comes over to you and is like, we want to do this event. You're like, you say no. You say, no, we decided this is what we're doing. This is our focus. That's a great idea for a different strategy session, a different year, because you can't be all places all the time and do it well. You just can't. Okay, I'm going to go back to sharing my screen. So know your numbers. The calculator I shared with you guys is a really kind of distilled and easy tool to just kind of plug in some numbers, and it does the math for you. If you don't have, for example, a dashboard, so I encourage you to use that. And as Joe says, it's not the prettiest spreadsheet on the planet. I'm sure if Joe was making it, it would be like chef's kiss, but it's not horrible. Okay, we're going back. Let's go here. Oh, you're looking at my email. Excuse me. Where is it? Try again. How do I do that? Oh, you guys, you'd think that all this, what do you call it? Like, no, that's not it. Where are you? What happens if I do this? Oops. Okay, I found it. 1 second. Let me go back. Sorry, you'd think after all of this Zoom meetings, I would have this like on lockdown, but I don't. Okay, we're going back to present. Okay, and apologies if you hear my dog in the background. Okay, so we went through this. Okay, must do number 4. Know what you are specifically asking for. And I say specifically with like an asterisk, an underline. Specificity is your best friend. And my suggestion, let's see if I have it right here, is to pick 3 to 5 impact points that you are going to say over and over and over again for the duration of 2022. Your organization might do 15 different things, or you have 22 ways people could fund your organization. The problem with that is that you have to spend so much time educating your audience on impact. Excuse me, I'm just going to shut my door. That by the time you come to the point of making an ask, you haven't been able to prime your audience well enough so that they're ready to, for example, say, take my money. And so I want you to distill down what are 3 to 5 impact points that you can say over and over and over again through different channels, through different stories all year long. And when you get bored of telling those impact points. I want you to say them 20 more times, because the repetition, that's how people will get to know it is specifically what you do. Here are some examples of ways nonprofits are showing impact. I just chose through Instagram, but you could see how all of these are ways that people can also go and tell a story in an email or a blog post, or when you're meeting face to face with someone. So the Block Chicago, which again is the organization Jemile leads, the one that's going to be speaking to us tomorrow. He did a great recent Instagram post on what the block does in 6 swipes. I encourage you guys to go check that out. But I love that it was 6 swipes. Like, it's not 22 or 15. I mean, I'm sure he has a whole bunch of broken down ways that like his organization helps people, but it's really manageable in this one. The next one is Manifest Works, which is a client of mine. This is one of the stats that the organization says over and over again. 53% of applicants worked full or part-time. That number grew to 92% for alumni. Why do we share that stat? Because it's a huge range. It goes from 53% to 92%. It says to people, audience members, that because of our program, people are going from part-time to full-time in a short distance of time for 92% of our alumni. I mean, that's huge, right? And then the other example I wanted to share is from the Little Red Dog. If you guys aren't following them on Instagram or Facebook or TikTok even, they're really fun follow, and they do a really great way of showcasing their rescue pups, and they'll tell like little stories, or like in this one, this is a reel that they did about Henry, who was looking for a forever home, and they were like, you know, Henry is an 11-year-old lab rescue kind of mixed dog, and he's good on a leash, and he loves taking photos, and he loves sitting out in the sun, and it really like made you feel connected to Henry as they're trying to rehome him. And then they're always able to tie in the story of, you know, they focus on the positivity versus like, this dog is going to be euthanized by the end of the day if we don't find him at home. They really take their rescue as like positive, uplifting, hopeful, happy. It's a really, really great example. So I want you again to think, or maybe even share in the chat right now, like, what do you think is your most powerful impact stat? If you had 30 seconds to say to a potential donor that their gift would matter, what would that gift do? What impact would that have on the world? I encourage you guys to share it in the chat right now so that we can get examples. I know sometimes that's just super duper helpful. I think things with numbers are especially helpful. Like anytime I see nonprofits say something like your support matters, or, you know, give the gift of impact today. That's too vague. It's too big. It's too broad. But when you distill it down to like this one in the middle, 53% of applicants worked full or part-time, and that number grew to 92%. You know that when you donate to this organization, you're helping up to 92% of alumni get full or part-time work, right? Which is incredible. Another great organization that I think does this well is my client Tender, who's always talking about the financial gap that their mothers face and what they do to bridge that gap through diaper delivery, through gift cards to grocery stores, to paying for rent, to gas cards. They do a really great way of telling those broken down stories over and over and over and over and over again. So I think examples are very, very helpful. I encourage you guys to put in the chat your most powerful impact stat. But again, I really think that you and your team, or you and your board, you should come up with 3 to 5 max, and then all get on the same page around that being what you say over and over and over again for the duration of this year. Okay. Okay, must do number 5. I want us to all take a deep breath. I talked about this in my email yesterday. But I want us to accept the fact that you're going to have to get out from behind your computer screen and out into the world. It is really, really, really hard to raise money from email and computer. I know for me, when I was a director of development, and I wrote about this in my email, I literally had to challenge myself. Like I was playing a game with myself, that I would have 10, 15, sometimes 25 face-to-face meetings each and every week. And it's true. I found when I met with people in person, I built connections faster, relationships were made, people would reply to my emails, answer my calls, reply to my text messages, attend the things I invited them to. And just like it's really easy to ignore someone that you only know by email, and then it goes up a notch when you know someone over like Instagram or LinkedIn messages, and then it goes up a notch when you do like a Zoom coffee. When you meet someone face to face, you know them now. Like you've shared energy with them face to face. And if you, of course, safety is a must. And especially whatever region you're in. But I think it's time. I think it's time for us fundraisers to get back out there, and you can start small. Maybe you challenge yourself to one in-person something a week, safe, distanced, masked, whatever it needs to be. But I think people are craving that. And I also think that we are out of practice. And I just know from doing it recently that it's hard. It feels hard. It feels like the first time you go to the gym after like a really long break, how you're like, oh, that felt so good, but man, am I wiped out? It's going to take some time to build up that energy or that practice or that muscle to meet with our donors. But I think for 2022, in a world where people are really fatigued from online learning and online meeting, so much more can be accomplished if you meet in person. And I think other people are wanting that too. I just know from my example, anytime that I've recently been like, do you want to just like meet up in person? People are like, yes. So I encourage you to start going for that. And the thing that you can do to start that flywheel effect is the next time someone invites you to connect, try and turn it into an in-person thing. Like don't lean on that leg of Zoom solely anymore. Okay. Okay. Now, feel free to skip ahead, but I have a new offer that I wanted to share with you guys because it's all about new donors, right? The number one question I get asked each and every year is, how do I find new donors? And I finally decided to do something about it. But instead of doing like another course, which 70% of people don't do, I decided to do what's called a sprint week. And it's going to be a 4-day intensive where we'll meet for 2 hours every single day within this certain week, where I'm going to teach you things I've never taught before around finding new donors. Because yes, it's great to have all the foundations in place. And once you check all those 5 things, now you actually have to go out and find those new donors. So here's the details. And I'm going to give you an example, a little teaser of what it looks like. So over the 4 days, we're going to be doing a mapping out of your goals and a timeline. We're going to talk about starting with what you have, plus my inside out method. Day 3, I'm going to be teaching you the seed method reimagined. I've never taught this before. I actually didn't know it was called the seed method until I read this kind of book about it. And I was like, oh, that's kind of what it's been. I just didn't have a name for it. And then day 4, we're going to talk about your top 100, and I'm going to do audits for you all so that you can have real life experience about how to go find your specific donors at your nonprofit. Here are the details. It's happening March 1st through March 4th from 10 to 12 Pacific Standard Time. Every single day, there will be recordings, there will be workbooks, worksheets, guides, calculators, all the jazz that I give you guys. It's $197 for over 8 hours of instruction. In my opinion, that is like worth its value and beyond. Yeah, I mean, you guys, I think, know that, but that's the cost. And that's the lowest it will definitely ever be. Okay, so my promise for this 4-day sprint week is that you will have what you need to go out and find at least 100 new donors. So you can choose to spread that out over the entirety of the year. It's workshop style, so there will be time to do the work within the sprint so that you're, again, not having to go back to your desk and sit down and figure out who these names are or what it is you're going to do. We're going to do the work together. And you will have the opportunity to write down specific names of up to 100 or more people. You can choose to do 20, you can do 100, you can do 200. The methods I'm going to teach you are repeatable. Again, that kind of secular effect, but that's my promise to you. Okay, a little teaser for an example of kind of what's to come. I wanted you guys to walk away with a win for this workshop. So have you heard this saying that the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago and the second best time is today? We've all heard that, right? Love that saying. No time like the present. So here's an example. I want you to pick someone. This is seriously something I want you to try and do this week. Pick an example of a person on your dream list. It could be anyone. Like it could be someone famous, someone not famous, someone niche famous. It could just be someone that you've thought, oh my gosh, that would be such a great connection, or I really want to get to know them, or whatever. Pick a person. Next, what I want you to do is consume a piece of content that they have been featured in. So maybe you heard them on a podcast, maybe you heard them on an Instagram live, you read a blog post, an article, whatever it is. I want you to then consume that piece of thing, the entirety, read the whole thing, listen to the whole thing, do the whole thing. And then what I want you to do is on Instagram DMs or LinkedIn messages, I specifically want you to do those channels versus like email or call them or something like that. I want you to reach out to them with gratitude. And if you guys have the ability to screenshot this next slide, this is what I want you to say, or a version of this. Hey, first name, I just listened to your podcast episode with insert the name of the host, and I had to reach out with a message of thanks. You really blew me away with your insights on XYZ. I work for a nonprofit called insert your name that does insert what you do. So your message really stood out to me. I can't wait to continue following along your work. And if you're ever up for a coffee chat, I'd love to connect. Okay. Okay. I just wanted to make sure I didn't have any more slides. I'm going to just, if you guys want to write this down, or like I said, screenshot it, I will just talk about me doing this. I do this all the time. And the response rate is 100%. I don't know anything else that has 100% response rate. The mental game I need you to get on board with is that the seed you plant today is not going to turn into a tree overnight. It's going to take time, but the seeds you plant today or tomorrow, or however the phrase goes, can bear fruit in the future. It's the foundation for relationship building. It's the foundation for a warm introduction. It's the foundation for so much of those big vision goals, right? So going back to this happening 100%, let me think of the most recent time I did this. I did this yesterday twice. Let me just remember the examples. Oh, I was listening to a podcast episode with this woman who I thought she helped me with a challenge that I think about constantly. I thought she was so smart. I really walked away with like 2 or 3 nuggets that I was like, that was so helpful. She works at a nonprofit. So yes, there's potential for her to want to learn from someone like me because I teach fundraising, and I've yet to meet a nonprofit on the planet that doesn't want fundraising support. And I just reached out because it was genuine. And I just said, hey, I listened to you on so-and-so's podcast. I thought what you said about A, B, and C was brilliant. I really struggled with my clients in this one area. So I found your, talking points super insightful. I work with nonprofits in the fundraising space. If you ever want to connect, let me know. Here's the link to my Calendly. It was super casual. She got back to me in like 23 minutes. We already have a phone conversation set up. And whether or not it works out for me to actually work with this person, you bet that she's also going to have my name in her head the next time she hears from someone that's like, oh, do you know anyone that helps out with fundraising support? So that's just how it worked for me in my personal business, but you can apply that to how it works in your nonprofit, right? This happens all the time where seeds are planted. I use the example from an organization called Tank Proof. Okay, now I'm going to actually come off share screen. And then we can go with questions. There's an organization called Tank Proof, which I am newly obsessed with. I heard about it from my friend Sarah, who works at Austin Angels. And we were just at lunch, gabbing as girls do. And she brought up this organization that she partnered with. And I don't know why it stuck with me so much. If you went to their Instagram page or their website, their branding is like unbelievable. And for me, that matters, or that like stands out. But I think it was also the fact that she told me this one statistic, which is that children from Black and Brown, predominantly historically forgotten communities, are 5 times more likely to drown than white children. And as someone that was I spent like 6 years teaching swim lessons, I was horrified by that stat because it's such an accessible thing. When you live in Southern California, we're surrounded by water. It's just like people are starting swim lessons as early as like 6 months old over here, and everyone does it. Like every single one of kids do that. And so I was horrified that that is a reality. And I'm not sure if it was the branding, the stat, what they do. It just really caught me. And so I actually reached out to them and I was like, I think what you're doing is amazing. Can I reach out to some funders on your behalf? Like, who can I connect you to? Da, 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 da. But I just bring all this up because it's not like that turned into anything overnight. But again, seed was planted. So you betcha that any single time I hear of anyone kind of being interested in this work or wanting to support this type of work, or anyone saying like, do you know anyone that's doing something kind of cool and niche and different? Because that happens. I literally get asked this kind of thing all the time. Who do you know, Jess? I'm going to say their name because I think they're doing such great work. So it's not about today necessarily. It's about having the patience for what it's to do in the future. Oh, good. I'm so glad, Charity. Thomas and Thurman seem amazing. I want to be their friends in real life. So if you can make that happen, we're just like Instagram and email friends, but I just love what they're doing so much. Okay, let me go back. There's a whole bunch of questions, so many questions. Okay. And feel free, if you have a question that is like way up in the chat, to use the little emoji feature to raise your hand. I'm also going to come over here. And if you guys are interested in the sprint week, I'm going to put the link there. There will obviously be, I'll put it in more places so you guys will see it. It's March 1st through March 4th. And I'm really excited to teach you guys how to find your next 100 donors. Okay, does anyone have a question that they just want to blurt out? Otherwise, I will go up the chain. Okay, I'm just catching up. We moved our data, da, 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 da. Okay, you guys are talking a little bit about CRMs. Great. Can you talk? Oh gosh, you guys have a lot of questions. Okay, this is great. I love answering questions. Yes, I will share the slides to attendees. I got you, girl. Okay, you guys are giving advice. Does a monthly newsletter that they open count as a touch point? Yes. So my rule of thumb for touch points is on a minimum, like this is the bare bottom of the barrel minimum, is that you do at least 1 email per month. I prefer that to be a storytelling email versus like a newsletter with a whole bunch of stuff and a whole bunch of places to click. What I see work best is when you do like 2/3 of a story that then says read more on our blog, because as I've said to some of you all before, we're trying to coach people to practice clicking from your emails to a website, because when people are in the habit of doing that, they're more likely to donate on your website than in your email, right? So we got to practice. You got to coach them. And so I don't want you to give it all away in the email, 2/3, and practice coaching people to click away. And one call to action. So that's usually like, go read the blog or follow us on Instagram or read more over here, that kind of a thing. Because I find that when I have a whole bunch of stuff in a whole bunch of places, no one does anything. We all do it, right? We're all like, oh, we'll come back to this email. We'll come back and read this article later. We never do it. No, we end up deleting the email later. So just keep it to one. I'll also give you a real life example. The top of the month, I sent an email with like, this is all the stuff that's happening in February. It had a really great open rate, but it had the most unsubscribes I've had in like months. Like, people were not into that. And it was also like, okay, this isn't the type of content, I guess, that people really like. So that's just also from my personal experience. So it's that plus at least 2-3 social posts a week. And I hate to be the one to say it, but if it's not a carousel and it's not a reel, it is not getting the reach that you want. And I know that's not what you guys want to hear, because that's new and different and it can feel like more work. But if you're just doing like a singular post on Instagram, it's just not getting the visibility that it used to these days, unfortunately. Stephanie asked, can you talk about how to automate the sequence of touches for new donors, or where to find that info? Yes. So if it's a brand new donor, I like to put people through either a 3-part welcome series, or there's even like 7 to 9 part welcome series that you just automate, right? Like they enter in the segment and then they get this series of touch points. If you have a tool like MailChimp or Bloomerang that has some smart technology, for example, if they open it, they get this email. If they don't open it, they get this email. You can get pretty fancy with all of that. But I like to do either the 3 or 7-part email sequence within a 30-day period. And that's just automated, right? Like that's just a really nice onboarding. And I have some tools and templates around that. Other things that you can do though, like orchestrating ways for people to have, for you to have an outreach point. For example, I love a good like town hall meeting, State of the Union, lunch and learn type of thing, where you're reaching out to people to say, hey, will you come join our executive director? We're going to talk about the next 6 months of program goals that we have. Like, if you're interested, come on board. It's less about them actually coming and more about having a touch point that isn't asking them for money at all. This actually happened to me yesterday. There's an organization called Lyft. I used to work at their LA office 100 years ago. And their executive director from Chicago was like, hey, our board members doing this thing on February 18th about race and inclusion. And I really think you'd like to go, like, here's the Eventbrite link. And it was so easy. I clicked right there. I was done in 2 seconds, and pending my calendar, I'm going to try and go. And that is going to be a really nice touch point. And the touch point for them is the text message. The touch point for me will be the content. So setting things like that up, you guys know I'm a big fan of a touch point on Valentine's Day. It's probably getting a little close if you aren't sending something physical, but that's a great holiday to send a Loom video or send a postcard or send a text message or send an email, something like that. Like, there's all these things you can do, you know, within a 3 or 6 month period, some of which are going to be automated and some of them are going to be kind of manual. Let's keep going. Touch point plan. We've moved our Bloomerang data 48. Yes, yes, yes. Yes. Allison, I don't know if you're still here, Allison, but I would say that the 48 hours is the goal. But you know, if you can't do it, a thank you 2 weeks from then or a month from then is still better than no thank you. It's more about putting the systems in place to give you the space to do the thank you. So like I say this all the time. When I was a director of development, the last hour of my day, every single day from 4:30 to 5:30, every single day was blocked off for gratitude. No meetings, no calls, get out of my way. I'm doing gratitude. And it was a way to have the space to write the notes, to make the calls. It was also a really nice way for me to end my day, because nothing feels better in fundraising to be able to practice gratitude. But I had to set up that system in place to allow me, it was sacred time, so that no ifs, ands, or buts, everyone was getting thanked within a relatively short amount of time. And it just kind of became, as they say, Bible or whatever, like no one was messing with my calendar. That was sacred time. So if you can do something like that, the data doesn't lie. If you are thanking your donors generously within 24 to 48 hours, the likelihood that they will return and increase their downstream revenue the next time is like off the charts, like in the 90% effective. Just if the organization and leadership does not embrace a culture of philanthropy, it's very difficult to, yes, that is true. And I don't know if you are the leaders, like, it is your job to instill a culture of philanthropy. If you are the director of development or the manager or the coordinator, and that is not your organization's culture, it's going to be an uphill battle. And you have to decide how hard you want to work at making that the reality. I'm going to keep going, but I do want to call out it's 11. So if you have to go, I'll keep going to answer the questions, and I will share the recording for sure. Let me see. Okay. There's some information around CRMs. I love these impact ones. Shannon. Wow. Over 180,000 days of care, over 75% of girls. That's so amazing. Morgan, I saw you had your hand raised, so feel free to unmute yourself while I'm digging out questions.
Yeah, I also stuck it in the chat. My question has to do with our first year. We had a lot of people that gave to us because they knew us personally. They didn't really care about the cause necessarily or the organization. And so somebody told me they're called angel investors. They're kind of like your early seed money people. So you're not expecting a lot of those folks to retain in the coming years, is my guess. And so I'm just thinking about, like, when I'm looking at who we retained from when we started in 2019 to who now we have in 2022, I wonder if you could talk a little bit about that. Like, angel investors versus sustaining donors are people that you call not because of who you are, but because of what you do.
Yeah.
And then do you weed any of those old people out? That's my other question, is like, can you pull them out so that you can like kind of release them out of your data so they don't kind of clog up the works because they're your second cousin in Boise?
They should say hi to Amanda down in Boise. So I think it's a limiting belief that seed funders can't become sustained funders, because the truth is people give money to people. So I can't tell you how many times a donor has stopped giving to an organization I've worked at because I no longer work at that organization and the relationship with the organization isn't there. So that's why going back to what are your touch points, what's your gratitude practice, so that you can indoctrinate them into falling in love with the organization and the impact and the work can be at the foundation versus the relationship solely being person to person. It's hard to do, but I think if you make an intentional effort, it can be done. I think what you can do when it comes to two things. Number one is, yes, you can bucket any lapsed donor and you can put them through a recapture campaign, right? You can send them a segmented postcard, email, phone call and say, we miss you. Why did you give in the past? Why are you never giving to us again? We want to find out so that we can do a better job in the future. Like, there is data to be uncovered in that, right? And then in terms of moving forward, your lapsed donors are generally in like a 12-month period. So the people that lapsed in 2020, if they go away and never come back, you wouldn't count them when you do this exercise next year. The lapsed donors will be who lapsed from 2022 versus 2021. Does that make sense? So in terms of kind of like kicking them out so they're not screwing up your data, you're only doing it year by year, because the likelihood, it's not impossible, and it does happen. I know of organizations who don't see a donor for 4 or 5 years and then they come out. It does happen, but if a donor goes away after 12 to 18 month period, the likelihood for them to returning is small.
Yeah, I'm just trying to think, like, we have people that gave to us when we did startup, and then they would have gotten an email from us, but then let's say they unsubscribed. And then we sent them like a physical impact report with like a gratitude. And we had done the thank you letter first, but now they get the thing at the mid-year, at the end of the year, like, hey, thank you. Look at what you did. Well, look at what you made happen. And then they never respond to that. And so then at some point, do we just kind of bless and release, I guess is my question. And is there any kind of process for blessing and releasing them out of your data? I guess they just disappear because you're starting from new year.
So I've talked about this a couple of times, but it depends on what channel you want to bless and release them. So for example, I'm a big proponent of scrubbing your email list. If someone hasn't opened an email from me personally in my email list in the last anywhere from 3 to 6 months, I put them through what's called a scrub sequence, where I send them 3 emails within a relatively short amount of time. That one is kind of like a story. The second one is like, here's a link to all these things I think you might be interested in. One's like a blog post, one's an impact report, one's a recording. I don't know, whatever the 3 things are. And then the third and final email is pretty straight on. It says something to the effect of like, hey, my fancy email technology shows that you haven't opened an email from me in the last 6 months. And I get it. Inboxes are full. So, if you don't open this email, consider, yourself off. We're going to be removing you from your email list. And if you find this, emailed too late, here's the link to resubscribe. And then you literally clean them off of your list. With mailing addresses, it's a little bit different. I think that if you haven't heard from someone, if you're an organization that's 105 years old, it's a little different than if you're only like 2 or 3 years old. For mailing, I would keep people on my mailing list for like at least 2 or 3 years. And then I would scrub them off from there. So like I'm putting together a bunch of Valentine's Day mailings for some of my clients right now. And they've sent me like donor data from long time ago. And I'm like, they made a $10 gift in 2017. Like, I'm not sending them a piece of mail, but that depends on your all's budget, your capacity. So you guys can make your own thresholds. 3 months on a nonprofit email list might be a little aggressive. So I might go more like 6 to 9 months. But if you're sending emails, like I send at least 2 emails a week. So if people aren't opening my emails within 90 days, it's like, okay, you don't want this anymore. And that's cool. So does that help?
Yeah, it really helps.
Okay, good job. No problem. Let's see. Yes, the 2 hours of the sprint week will be during business hours, but of course there'll be recordings. The times I provided are in Pacific Standard Time. How do you find their contact information? I totally have my person. She was, oh, good, Amanda. Okay, so you can, there might need to be like a whole course on LinkedIn, but again, because you're going through messengers, not emails, you don't really need like their email information. So if you just like Google their name, LinkedIn, especially if they're like somewhat professional, will probably have a profile, and you can just message them. You can just send them a message right there. It's kind of a magical tool. There's a donor who's featured in a local publication. However, they're kind of unreachable due to gatekeepers. If it's like a foundation or someone that's not kind of represented as an individual, this is why though I'm telling you guys that my preferred channel for what I taught is like go through a LinkedIn Messenger or go through a DM. It's much more casual that way. And like you come in as a real human versus like very professional email style. And in my experience, like I've been able to do this trick with 100% of people and gotten a 100% response rate. So I feel like there are ways to do it. It is a little tricky on Instagram, for example, because some people have like restricted profiles, so you can't message them, but that's why LinkedIn is like gold. Will there be another opportunity for a sprint week? Now I'm just like rolling through things. I don't know. We're going to see how this goes. I've never done a sprint week before. I just knew that like I couldn't put together another course that people don't complete. I know you guys need new donors like yesterday. And so this was kind of my way to do that. So we're going to try it. And then if not, or if we do another one, there's nothing scheduled though. Okay. Can I talk a little bit about Angel Investor? We talked about that. Okay, good. Are there any final questions? I know we went a couple minutes over. I hope that these foundational must-dos are helpful. If you guys are interested in this sprint week, I would love to see you there. I'm really excited to teach some of the methods I've never, ever taught before. They're just things I used to do when I was a in-house fundraiser. And if you have any questions, you know where to find me. Okay. Anything else?
Thank you so much, Des.
You're welcome, Morgan. Okay, you guys have a great rest of your Tuesday, and I hope I see you for the conversation with Jamal later this week. Okay, bye.
Bye. Thanks, Amanda.